Take a look at this play. It looks like a common dribble drive into the paint for a kick out three. But let's wind back. Look at how many offensive players are in the paint. Most people would call this basketball malpractice, but this has been a key concept to the #1 offense in the NBA. In fact, it's a concept that may help you reimagine the idea of a great modern day offense. In the modern NBA, the most important aspect of a great offense is space. The best way to create space is to have as many shooters on the floor as possible. Most teams want at least 3 to 4 shooters standing on the 3-point line, which then gives the ball handler the space to drive into the paint and kick out for wide open threes. But for Cleveland, the roster doesn't necessarily fit this bill. In fact, if you look at their starting lineup, they start 2 non-shooting bigs in Evan Mobley and Jarrett Allen, which is a rarity today. Some teams do play 2 bigs, but one of them is typically a shooter. The only team that consistently plays 2 non-shooting bigs are the Golden State Warriors. Now they suck this year, but in the past, their motion offense confused defenders with all the screening and cutting. The main reason it worked so well was because they had Steph Curry, whose gravity is able to open up space for those non-shooting bigs. Cleveland doesn't have that shooting luxury, but Kenny Atkinson has transformed this offense by introducing a few unique concepts. The first big concept is encouraging guys to cut into the paint, even with guys in there. In theory, this doesn't really make sense. When 2 guys are running the pick and roll in the paint, you would think that another person cutting in will mess with the spacing, which makes it hard to get a good shot. But by moving, you're forcing your defender to also move away from traditional defensive principles. For example, Max Strus is running an empty side pick and roll with Jarrett Allen, with both driving in. Ty Jerome cuts. Notice how Aaron Wiggins thinks that his rotation is to Jarrett Allen. This is usually the rotation, but Jerome's cut makes himself available and he lays it in. In the second, Garland and Allen run that same pick and roll on the other side, and Lou Dort completely ignores Mitchell because he thinks he's staying in the corner. So Dort moves to Allen, but Mitchell cuts, is now open, and gets fouled. Now typically when a pick and roll is ran, a ball handler has specific reads from the roller to the corner. But this baseline cut is not necessarily in a lot of offensive players' progressions because they're used to guys standing in specific spots. That's why most defenders also have specific progressions. For a help side defender, their priority is to help on the pick and roll. The reason is they're typically expecting their matchup, the guy in the corner, to stay there and have someone else help out if a pass is made. If you ever wonder why 5-out offenses don't work at times, it's because defenses are already calculating what passes are going to be made, which then can make your offense more predictable. My larger point here is that the corner guy moving into the paint even with people there can actually help open up space. But maybe the most important point of all is that it doesn't matter who's making this cut. Whether that cutter is a shooter or not does not matter. Just by being in a spot that your defender isn't used to covering, you're making yourself a threat. I acknowledged earlier that Evan Mobley isn't a shooting big, but he has shot 41% from 3 this season. But the point is that even if he didn't shoot that well, this cut works just as effectively. Now, if there isn't a shot anywhere, the next thing that cutter could be is an outlet. So when Wade cuts and there's not any room for a shot, he moves middle to be a passing option. Porter's watching the ball, so Garland moves to the corner and he pump fakes into an open 3. On this one, Niang is creeping into the paint, but he seals Butler, which then makes himself available. With 3 guys surrounding the paint, Allen kicks it, and Jerome now has a runway for an easy floater. But this all can't work if it isn't for Jarrett Allen. On these pick and rolls, you might notice that he's not diving super hard to the rim. In fact, sometimes it may look like he's just hanging out in the paint, not expecting to score. This is all by design. By not being directly in front of the rim, he's intentionally opening up space for the ball handler to maneuver into the paint or for a pass to be made. So when Mobley gets the ball, Allen moves to the middle to open up the passing lane, and Wade is now left open for 3. When the Cavs run the pick and roll, there will be many instances where Allen needs to give himself up to open up the whole offense. And this cut is what is coined as the sacrificial cut. The sacrificial cut is where you move with the expectation that you're not getting the ball, but to help open up space for a teammate. For most people that cut, they usually see that as a way to score. So sometimes people get the idea that if you're cutting and not open, you're just getting in the way. At times it can be true, but again, it's all dependent on a few factors. In Allen's case, it's all about understanding where the passing lanes are so that he's not getting in the way. But for others, like a perimeter player, it's more about timing. The best way to think about this is to move at a time where a defender has to make a quick decision, pay attention to the ball handler, or find their matchup. Here, Garland runs a guard pick and roll and turns the corner. So Allen cuts and Jackson Davis has a decision between him and the ball. He chooses the latter, so Kuminga drops down, which then leaves Strus open. After he swings it, he makes a second sacrificial cut to get Buddy healed away, and LeVert can lay it in. Here's one with Mobley on the strong side. So as Garland drives, Mobley cuts down to pull J-Dub away, which forces Hartenstein to come over, and that opens up Jarrett Allen for the layup. It's also really important to give credit to Cleveland's ball handlers for making these passes. Not many players in the league can make these passes, especially the crossbody ones to the corner. Garland and Mitchell have great court mapping skills, so they know where their teammates are at all times. And that takes us back to that opening clip. With Niang cutting and Allen giving himself up, the Warriors collapse the paint, and Mitchell finds Max Strus for the wide open three. The other part that I really like is how Cleveland uses the baseline to their advantage. We've shown you how they use the dunker spot, but their offense becomes more potent when they move from one side to the other. The key part is again the timing. The best time to move along the baseline is when the help defender's really worried about the drive. That's when their eyes really lock in on the ball, so it's easy to mislocate their matchup. And when a Cav moves, they're usually going to be open for a shot. I think this concept is best explained by the series against the Nuggets. On this first one, Isaac Okoro starts on the left corner, but moves to the right as Mitchell runs the pick and roll. Porter's expecting a roll, so he stays in the paint, and now Okoro has a wide open three. So next time down, the Cavs try the same play again. Denver adjusts by having Murray switch to Okoro with Porter in the paint, but now Garland moves up to the top of the key and now has a wide open shot, but he just misses. When you move from one side to another, it makes it so much harder to really help on a drive. With Mitchell driving right, Mobley moves to the opposite block, Draymond stays to help, so Kuminga has to drop down, which then opens up the only option, Ty Jerome, but for a wide open three. As you may have noticed, the Cavs offense isn't really doing anything so fancy. In fact, a lot of these possessions really start with a basic pick and roll, but Darius Garland has been exceptional this year running this basic play. If the defense doesn't bring an additional defender, Garland's going to his floater, which he's shooting at 60% this season. But even without that, he's so good at changing pace to keep the defense guessing, and it doesn't hurt that Jarrett Allen is great in the floater game as well. So as much as defenses want to live with that shot, getting into the paint with that much success makes them think twice. But once they bring that extra defender over, the offense really then becomes a fundamental masterclass. One thing Cleveland has really mastered is reading the defender's eyes and momentum. As the ball swings, LeVert feels Porter coming, so he catches the ball with momentum to blow by him. Gordon's eyes then lock in on LeVert, so Wade knows that he can move to the corner, and as Gordon tries to find him, Wade then drives by for the and one. As you know, Aaron Gordon's a pretty good defender, especially against someone like Wade who's not necessarily a strong ball handler. But learning to read someone's eyes puts them in scramble mode, which then opens up opportunities for these shooters to drive the ball with force. On this one, notice how LeVert's being chased, so when he catches it, he moves back right to now create that space, and that forces the defense to react, which leads to a wide open kick-out three for Sam Merrill. When someone doesn't have the ball in their hands, they know when there's a chance to move. Because defenders typically are looking at the ball, that gives them the opportunity to cut, which then opens everything up. Besides those baseline cuts, the most common I've seen is their give and go cuts. Without the ball in their hands, they can move much more freely, which increases the chances of creating that separation. Unlike Golden State's motion offense, this Cavs offense is much more replicable because it's taking concepts that everyone knows and then executing it at the highest level. Their big men understand when they need a slip or screen to create an advantage, the off-ball guys know where they need to be and are reading the floor to figure out their advantages. And it doesn't hurt when Darius Garland and Evan Mobley have also made noticeable leaps. To keep things in perspective, just a year ago, this roster was deemed as a misfit for the modern NBA, but with some few unique tweaks, Kenny Atkinson has not only brought this team to life, but has them sitting on top of the East as a real championship contender. Now, it really may take a championship for teams to make real changes, but personally, this team has changed my view of what a good modern NBA offense could look like, and hopefully through this video, it'll change yours too. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you'd like to support me, feel free to like and subscribe. You can also support me on these platforms. Hope you guys enjoyed your weekend, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.